Now, and I'm crossing live to Adelaide to catch up with the former Australian Foreign Minister and former High Commissioner to the UK, Alexander Downer. Good to talk to you, Alexander. You were back in Adelaide for a visit and you're stuck here as long as all the travel restrictions are in place.
Yes, that's right. I can't realistically get back to London now, so for the time being I'm stuck here. But there's, of course, a very severe lockdown in London, so I can do my work online from here just as easily as I could do it there. It doesn't, in that sense, make a great deal of difference.
Yeah, I reckon you're in a better place. Tell us the comparison. We know what's happening in Australia. What's the situation in the UK? How much worse off are they there compared to Australia?
The lockdown, it's similar but more severe. They do have the rule that only two people can go out together. You can only go out once a day from your house. Of course, a lot of people in the case of London live in apartments, so they're stuck in their apartments. 1 person in 5 is a single person. So you can imagine for single people, I mean, this is true in Australia, but for single people, this is particularly isolating and particularly difficult. So, everything is shut here and then a bit more. It's pretty severe over in the UK.
One thing I've disagreed with you on in recent years is Brexit. You, as High Commissioner, said that the UK should remain part of the EU. I like to think you were just running the Australian government's line there. But surely this situation now demonstrates that Brexit was the right thing. Surely the control of borders, the national sovereignty in a crisis like this is exactly what the UK needs.
Yes, because, as you know, within the European Union there's something called the Schengen Agreement, which provides for free movement of all European citizens between those EU countries which have signed up to that agreement. But they're really going to have to suspend that for the time being to stop people moving in and out of their countries. I think what this has done is drive home to people, particularly to the metropolitan elites, the importance of nation states. There is only so much you can do multilaterally or through some plurilateral institution like the European Union. There is a certain amount that must be done by the nation state, and when it comes to an emergency like this, there really is no alternative. I also think people are going to think much more carefully about the degree of dependency that their countries have on other countries, on the supply, for example, of essential medicines, on the sharing of research and development and all of these sorts of things. People are going to think more and more about whether we should be doing more of these things at home rather than depending on importing them.
You know, that's going to apply to all sorts of supply chains, to all sorts of countries, but there's going to be a special focus on China because of their dominance in global trade. But what about China's deception and denial in the outbreak here in Wuhan in the first place? Just what does that tell us about the Chinese regime, and what are the repercussions going to be in international relations once we get this behind us?
Well, all the indications are that the Chinese didn't want to cause any damage to their economy, in particular the economy of Hubei province, where Wuhan is. So they didn't talk a great deal about it. I guess they didn't judge that it would coronavirus would spread as much as it did. They of course have a capacity to cover up information which you don't have in liberal democracies. Then they of course have reacted very strongly to it. But I think for China, when this crisis is over, or more or less over, it's going to be a major problem for China's standing in the world. After all, the SARS crisis broke out in China, in southern China in 2002. The coronavirus crisis, the COVID-19 crisis, has broken out in China. It says something about the standards of biosecurity in China, the quality of food safety standards in the wet markets there, and so on. So I think it's a major problem for China. They're obviously trying to rectify it with a range of strategies, one of them helping countries that are most severely affected, like Italy, and another strategy is to go around saying, well, it might have started some other way. Maybe it didn't start in China after all. An American Marine brought it from Japan or something like that.
Well,
so,
America is
that does them more damage.
Sure,
that
it does,
install more damage.
Which is my next question. Of course, the US is going through an incredible dilemma now. We all hope they can get on top of the infections as soon as possible, but they look like going through an incredibly difficult period over the coming months. What this will do for the already very prickly relations between Washington and Beijing is going to have massive repercussions for years to come, isn't it?
Well, I think at the political level, governments are trying to tone this down, but I think at the community level, there's no doubt that in America, as in Australia, as in the UK and elsewhere, the public are very well aware that this crisis originated in China. So from China's reputational point of view, this is hugely damaging. I've noticed, much less so here in Australia, but I've noticed in the UK, members of Parliament getting very aggressive about China as a result of this, and even ministers in the government talking about reviewing the UK's relationship with China. Well, that's just the UK. But I think in the US there won't be a lot of love of China as a result of this, whatever the political class and foreign policy experts might wish. I think at the public level this will do China's standing in the world a great deal of harm.
Alexander, there's so much more I'd like to talk to you about, but since we are out of time, since you're stuck in Adelaide, hopefully we can catch up again next week.
Yes, so it will be a pleasure.
Great stuff. Thanks very much. Alexander Downer there, the former Foreign Minister of Australia, live from Adelaide.